retirement is about being financially free. Period. End of story. There
Hard
is
stop.
no
Got
age
it.
attached to it. There's nothing. As soon as you have enough assets to live the lifestyle you want to live, to me, you're retired.
Be the change you want to see. Make a difference by giving your money a purpose, a mission to do good. Welcome to Money with Mission, where we show you how to create passive income so that you have options for how to work and how to live your life while leaving a legacy of positive social impact.
Welcome back to Money with Mission. Today I have a special guest, Brad Barrett, who is coming to us from California today. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. And anybody who's not watching this on YouTube, Brad's company is Make Your Money Matter. That is important to everybody, right? Your money has to matter. It is not just money in a bank. It's got to do something for you. Brad, tell us how you came to think about money and how money matters and what matters about it.
Yeah. So being a financial advisor, and our overall company is One Capital Management. Our show and our platforms that we get out there through our radio shows, our podcast, our YouTube channel through Make Your Money Matter. And that name, it's actually funny you say that, came from trying to be all creative. And I was like, you know what? What I really share with clients over 20 years now is it needs to matter to you in whatever capacity you want to use it for. Let's just name it that. And so my creative team and I just kind of said, there we go. I'm not trying to be, anything more than that, but I've been doing this for about 19 years, almost 20 years here in the financial services industry. I kind of joke with people. I've never flipped a burger, whether that's good or bad. This is all I've ever done. And I love it in the sense because I've been able to learn as I go. And my reason for even being in finance is my dad was in telecommunications. Mom was a teacher. Grandparents were military. I mean, there was no one in my household really that was financially sound in the sense of truly understanding what money means to them individually and then ultimately for our family. And, like many out there watching and listening, something cathartic happened in our life for my father who worked for a company for 20 years. The company decided to go bankrupt and lost his job. And he's since recovered. I don't necessarily share that for empathy reasons. It's a man I look up to, my father, obviously, but it did something in me when I was sick. It happened to be when I was 16 years old. And which I'll be honest with you, I don't know what I said. I kind of blacked out, but I walked into a bank and I just said, I want a job here. And all I can remember really was I wanted to learn everything I possibly could about money so that event would never happen to me or my family. And then at that point, I think it was also the reason where I really felt God had touched my heart and said, this is the purpose I want for you. And I've never looked back. That was 20 years ago. So yeah.
Interesting. Do you remember, you said you kind of blacked out, but did you remember if your dad or what feeling you got from your dad about having lost his job? Did money really come up? Because I don't know that at that age, I guess I would think about how we're going to get money, but I don't know that I would have thought to go to a bank to get a job or something like that. I don't know how that would have.
Not to sound however it's going to sound, but at 16, I was given other things that happened in my life. I was pretty aware as a 16-year-old, unlike others. So to me, the awareness, I'll be honest with you, like any 16-year-old, okay? You think you know the world, but you absolutely do not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we know this as parents. So anyways, I'll digress. But the reality I was realizing that the awareness was simply that I understood that A could happen. And then B, the transpiring events afterward, kind of the ripple effects, if you will, just spoke to me as a 16-year-old. I saw my dad working his tail off to selling cars without knowing the numbers. I could just see it happening and I didn't understand it. And so I knew it had to do with income and sources because I understood at that point in my life, because I also was turning 16 that summer. I'll never forget this. Like I'd saved up to buy my first truck. And so money I understood from just doing chores and other things, right, was a factor to being able to afford things. And so that all kind of came to a convergence during this event. And the bank to me was just the closest thing I could find that said, hey, I can learn about money here.
Gotcha.
And I became a teller, operations supervisor in my junior and senior high school. And that was history.
How do you think being a bank teller helped you get to where you are now?
More than anything, I think that's just like, to me, again, I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but that's like a great entry level environment. You are doing a lot of transactions. So I tried to make it relational when I was there. You're doing a lot of transactions. You're meeting with clients hands-on first and foremost. You're dealing with their daily stuff. So you're not really getting in depth with investing necessarily. It's more transactional. but you're starting the social aspect of being around money and being the intermediary for them within the bank. And there's plenty of conversations you have with repeat customers you see every other day that are depositing checks for their businesses and getting to know them personally and realizing what they do. And the biggest thing I noticed was what I love about even being an advisor today is the ability to see and work with so many people in so many different areas of life, different backgrounds, different family structures. It's a cool seat to be in. I feel very blessed. And I think I learned that other than the money items or what certain things were in the banking or financial world was, I learned about human beings. So you learn about their context within the money world for them.
Mm-hmm. Which is really going to be important for you in your future as becoming a financial planner, is understanding people and how money, like we both know, is a tool. It's not our being. And so how people use that money or how people think about that money is pretty important in that whole financial planning aspect. So can you remember I'm just thinking as a teller, I don't know that I would get to financial planning. I would think, how do these people make this much money? And this is how people are different. I probably would think of it a little differently. But you're looking at it, you're seeing people making way more money than you are. You're having these conversations with people, getting to understand them better. When you went to college, how did college help prepare you for becoming a financial planner, if it did at all?
For me, when I graduated high school, I went right into a 4-year university and I wanted to study economics. So the one thing I'll say from the bank was I realized what I wanted to do. I mean, there's kind of 2 routes I was going to looking at, is like kind of understanding finance, but I actually was realizing I was starting to read some things at that point because I was in the financial world. And I just kind of really started liking the environment that money plays in. And that's really economics, right? That's the supply. I mean, basically everything boils down to supply and demand, right? It's pretty simple. We all can at a base level understand that. And that was fascinating to me. So through college, just knowing I wanted to study that was really a step forward for me, I think. And then I think during college, I'm not necessarily sure I learned anything particularly that I carry into today, other than some economic macro trends that we use in our portfolio structure. But I had actually started my practice while in college. I had hooked up with a broker dealer during college I was working for on winter breaks and summer breaks. And that's actually where I started my advisory practice. In fact, my first client was my roommate in college.
Okay.
And so I was doing both. I was kind of learning, as well as I'd already had 2 or 3 years in the financial services industry. And I wanted to then say I knew where I wanted to go. I was blessed. I was lucky to be able to know at an early age what I wanted to do. Like, there was never been a question for me. This is what I wanted to do. I might have been unique. And I realize this now as I say it, that I never went into this business to make money. I really didn't. It was to earn money relative to value, as we all should.
Right.
But it was simply for the purpose that I think God touched my heart. Is like, I wanted to be around this to help others. Whether or not I made money at it was not what I set out to do. And I think at the bank, I had actually one of the cool guys that was there. He was a financial advisor that worked for the bank, just not off the teller floor. And I just would start talking to him. I'd kind of ask him things, and just when I got really involved, I just intrigued by investing in general personally. And that's what kind of spawned the love of doing that for others.
When you're going back a little bit, when your father lost his job with his 20-year company, did he lose a pension, 401k? Did he lose all that stuff too?
Yes. Actually, it was a public company, and it was actually one of the larger corporate bankruptcies. It was a sad thing because it was just corporate greed. It was the CEO being a bad cookie, if you will. And it was really sad. And so, actually what the biggest thing I know about that was lost was options. A lot of these guys, these public, like thousands of others, right? When you get acquired, you receive options like incentive stock options, performance stock options. And so he was a company man. He made a good salary, but he invested all of his options like many people do in public companies. And something goes under, those go away. So the retirement plan, which I know we can kind of talk about today and what retirement means, all of a sudden in his world, being at that time, mid-40s, it's like, whoa, my whole plan that I thought out, that I thought I was getting towards, had just like abruptly changed.
Gone. It's gone. Yeah. I think about Enron and all those companies where these people had their plan tied up in their company and quickly learned and I think Enron was bad actors also. You've got nothing. You've got nothing if that company goes down. And I know people today who are banking on a company to take care of them when they finish. And so that's why I brought that up. And I think the people out there that I know where you work, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I say it to you all the time. Don't count on that money.
No, and it's true. And sometimes in those situations, my dad's company was actually MCI WorldCom. So
Okay.
if
Uh-huh.
you recall anything in the early 2000s, right on the heels of Enron, it was the same thing. And so it was the Verizon, the AT&T as we know it today. I mean, it was big.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he'd worked there at previous companies and it kind of just got acquired as a sales guy, and you look back at the history on that, it was just the CEO basically cooking the books or something like that. I mean, I was too young. I didn't understand
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
the reality is they were all banking on this. And I think like what I see you share on your show as well, which I love, and I know we do, is financial literacy in general helps alleviate the dependence that you may or may not think you have on someone else, whether that someone is a company. Understanding money for yourself, doing the basics of living within your means, keeping debt under control or eliminate it completely, depending on how you're, operating that. Those protect you from events like this that I'll argue is probably low probability. I mean, these aren't happening every day, but it's possible. And I lives that. And so I share, if it's at all possible, I want to help you make sure that it's not a possibility for you. And we do that obviously like you do through financial literacy, education, and independence and all of those things.
Mitigating our risks. Yes.
Yep.
You talked, I listened to you in one of your podcasts talking about managing your son or coaching your son's little league and never having enough players on the field and having all the right players on the field. And in your analogy, you compared it to having the right stock portfolio. But what I took from that is I always talk about having the right team. You need your financial planner, you need your wealth manager, you need your right accountant, you need all these people in your life to help you understand your money. That is all about your financial. You don't have to know everything. Just like in medicine, you don't have to know everything, but you need to know where to get the answer if you need the answer. So I love that analogy of the baseball team. If you don't have everybody you need on your team, you are not going to win.
If you watched that, as you probably saw, I was kind of like, we had to register 9 players, and in Little League, you just never get 9 players. So I'm managing this team with a bunch of 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds, and I'm like, I got little Timmy in the outfield going to the bathroom, and I still only have 7 players, and I'm just like, oh my God. But like we do in our life, it was like a good analogy for me that I use in my practice. I related that specific one, obviously, like you said, to not having the right sectors or industries within your portfolio from a diversification standpoint.
Yeah.
But obviously from an advisor, I totally agree with you. The beauty of that analogy is it can be used in different ways. And having your team, with your advisor, your investment manager, insurance specialist, your estate planner, your tax accountant, and also not only just having them, but making sure that they're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Like integration, we at Hero One Capital Management are big on that. We manage about $5 billion for clients across the United States. And one of our big ethos is making sure we have an integrated approach to a wealth management plan, which is basically having strategic partnerships within our client base, within their relationships, or if they don't have them and need them, our job is to have 2 or 3 we can refer to them that we work closely with. I could not agree more.
That's perfect. Yeah. I know physicians don't think about life like that. We do our job, and yes, we use consults and we talk to other physicians about stuff going on with the patient. But when it comes to our money, I don't know very many that have a full team out there helping to manage your stuff and give it to your. It's like I always think about, you put your money in a suitcase and you give it to that hand around the corner that's promising to take it and build it for you.
It's interesting to make that analogy too, because I've actually used that analogy sometimes where it's like, even going granular on that, right, is saying, whoever's listening or watching right now, you might be in a certain industry. You want to find a couple things when you look at an advisor, right, that's credentialed, a fiduciary, has experience. But then you also want to find someone that's a specialist. Like, when's the last time you went to to go get brain surgery from an orthopedic surgeon, right? Like, you wouldn't do that with your health, so don't do it with your money. You know what I mean? Like, it's equally as important. And so I just think that's a really important thing, to start with the specialist and then work with that specialist and finding that person that they might be a specific specialist within what you do, but that firm and his or hers advisory relationship has a network for teams.
Network is always like a key word for me. What is your network, and what is the network of the people you're surrounding yourself with? I have one of my coaches is I want to be able to make a call and no more than 2 calls away from the answer I need. And that's huge. I mean, when you think about
right. I mean, your network in general in life, like your parents say, right? Show me your friends, they'll show you your future. Even as an adult, you want to make sure your community is strong and has the same vision and goals you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want that from your advisor as well. I'm a big believer in that.
I love it. Hey, you wrote a book, Retire Right. And we talked a little bit before we got on about retirement and what that means. People ask me, am I retired from medicine or am I retired? I'm like, I don't know that I know what that word means anymore. So why don't you give your definition of retire?
I love when we were talking for a minute there beforehand, I'm going to go on a limb and say we probably have the same vision on this one, which I think is cool. Me being in practice as a financial advisor and hearing what you've done on your shows and everything like that and who you work with. To me, retirement is an adjective, not a verb. It's a descriptor. It's not describing a person, a place, or thing. And I think we use that retirement as like this financial world over the past 50 years really uses it as a word to describe an event. And the reality is the event is happening every day.
Yeah.
And so to me, retirement, and then more than that, we then attach it to an age. Like I would argue anyone watching or listening right now, you hear the word retirement, it almost triggers an age. And likely that age is probably 65, 66, 67. My first question is why? Well, we've been told that. We've been told the NRA, the National Retirement Average age of retirement was 65. Now it's 67. So we immediately attach it to a number. And I'm kind of going like, I've never in 20 years of being a financial advisor, have ever attached retirement to an age. To me, to get into my actual longer-winded answer, sorry, retirement is about being financially free. Period. End of story. There is no age attached to it. There's nothing. As soon as you have enough assets to live the lifestyle you want to live, to me, that's the point where like, look, money's a great employee, but a terrible boss. So as soon as you flip that relationship, you're retired, in my opinion.
I love it.
It's your choice. It now becomes an option. It now becomes, hey, I'm choosing to work and be in practice because I enjoy it. Yes, I'm making an income because I'm providing value, and value needs to have an income attached to it. That's human worth.
Yeah.
But the reality is I'm choosing to versus the whole idea of letting money run your life versus you running, have it work for you versus it. And I think that's 100%. A huge concept.
100%. My company vision is every woman has the financial ability to walk away from any job or relationship that is not in her best interest. And we could call that retirement. You have the ability to retire from that job or that relationship and go do another one. And you can retire from that one. What you get the choice. You've stopped trading your time for dollars. I loved you saying you make your money your employee and send it out to do the work for you. Bring it, make it, tell it what to do and make sure it's doing it and make sure it's bringing you money back like your boss right now is doing for you. That's what you're doing. Them.
I'm likely assuming, the women you work with, if you think about it, right, if they're really honest with themselves and then with you, that usually isn't the relationship we have to money, men or women. We just don't have it that way. We have a relationship to money that typically starts generationally speaking from our parents, from our grandparents. Remember, mind you, got to remember, we're only one generation away from the Great Depression era. My grandparents, our parents, they were raised during this time period. You got to think, it's only been 50 years since the invent of a retirement plan or ERISA, Employee Retirement Income Securities Act. It's only been roughly 50 years since the invention of a credit card, and credit versus actually what you have in the bank account is what you have to pay for things. And so we're evolving. I think all of us are evolving into what we know as financial literacy, and what we know, we're not being taught how to fill out a mortgage application in high school. We're not being taught how to budget and understanding debt to income ratios, or principal, interest, taxes, and insurance should only be 28 to 35% of your gross income. We don't know that stuff in high school. So I tell these people and the bars who work for it, like, you're coming to an advisor, you're coming to a coach to walk you through things that we've studied personally, as well as we're doing as a profession, to help you make the relationship you have with your company, to be able to have that ability to say, if I choose to leave tomorrow, I could. And I think if you start there and say, if you want to get there and you're actually pertinent about getting there and purposeful, I should say, about getting there, you can. It's just a matter of what you're going to sacrifice, because this isn't the sexiest thing in the world to do. Not living on debt, living within your means. It's not the prettiest thing. It's kind of the daily 1% gains every day that matter, and those add up.
Talking about the one generation, we're not that far from Depression era. We're not that far from ERISA. All those things just formed. And I recently learned that women didn't get the right to have their credit card in their own name until not that long ago, the 70s. So even women and managing money, and we are behind for a lot of different reasons. There's the whole socioeconomic, social, all that stuff around that.
It's interesting because That's why I really was excited to be on your show. A couple of weeks ago, I did a show. I called it Women Are the Queens of Investments. And I purposely put on their kings and crossed it out and put queens because the idea is that I work with a lot of individual clients. I work with married couples, men, women. And what I've noticed is and you share this on your show, which I love, and it's important to talk about this. There are generational and even human being differences in how we look at money. And what I've noticed, and I actually recently on that show I did, talked with one of my clients who's been with probably 8-9 years, very strong woman, love her to death, very successful, raised a beautiful family, but she's on her own kind of thing. And I know her well enough to ask her. And she said, there's a couple of things that we deal with that I've noticed that I wanted to share it was, number one, if you're a caretaker and you're a woman and you build a family, there's a likelihood you will be out of work for a certain period of time, just naturally.
Yes.
And if you think about the break points in compound interest, just start there. If you're out for, let's say, 9 months or a year, whatever it might be, on maternity leave, and let's say you have more than one kid, you could be out for a year or two, for example, just because of lifestyle, which is a beautiful thing. That's a great thing. But you're also missing out on investing in a 401k or putting money aside, right? So that's important to talk about. And what do you do to plan for that? And then obviously there's some behavioral traits, if you study them, that women tend to be more, I don't know if you love your opinion on this, obviously, is they're more savers than investors. They're more putting it aside. They're not necessarily risk takers as much as men are. Now, obviously, that's a little bit of a
generalization. Yes.
Generalization.
Studies have shown that in general, women will be less likely to invest or spend way more time trying to understand an investment and miss the opportunity. And once we do get in there, we tend to do better overall with investing. So
I'm glad you said that because my whole ethos after kind of looking at some studies, and again, being a man, obviously I'm speaking from studies, which is why I like kind of going on these shows is like, and talking with my client, for example, I was kind of going like, gosh, I was motivated. If we could get out there and say, okay, look, I understand there's reasons for that too. But if we can move you into the camp of understanding investments, you're going to fare far better than men because we, believe it or not, are more emotional. I believe more emotional with our money than women are because men attach their identity to money. And women actually have in my opinion, a very good relationship with money. Money doesn't define them. Money doesn't drive them like men do. And again, these are generalizations. I'm well aware.
100%.
But I'm thinking this from 20 years of being an advisor, working with thousands of clients across the United States. I have a pretty good sample study to kind of look at this. And that's why I really wanted to write that show around that because I thought it was fascinating because I agree with you. Women actually fare better if they can actually get their hands on the concepts. And then the third thing I think she mentioned, which was interesting, and I figured this was, they tend to be more do-it-yourselfers and not really wanting that help from someone else. I don't know if that's necessarily across the board.
Yeah.
But I think, man, if you can combine with someone like yourself or an advisor, for example, man, sky's the limit, in my opinion, for independence, financially speaking in particular. And it's a great thing.
I think that in that part about do it yourself, having a community or when women have a community of women that are doing the same thing, we'll do much better. And I think that is actually what we want because when you're out there by yourself, you get kind of scared, like, I don't know if I'm thinking about this right. I don't know. And you'll go and actually reach out to somebody. And that's why we build our community, Wealth Builders, so that there is that there for women who want to talk about money, because that's another thing. We don't talk about money in the general conversation. It tends to be one of those things. You'd rather talk about sex than talk about money. Just very interesting to me.
Well, it's like, isn't it wild? It's like, I always said this too in my practice, like money, politics, and religion are all things we keep close to our chest. And it's almost like money's like more so than sex even. It's like a taboo subject.
Yes.
How is money more taboo than what you're doing behind closed doors? I've never understood that.
I don't either. You ask somebody how much something costs and they are like, get insulted. And it's like, let's just start throwing those numbers out there. Who cares? It is money. It is your employee. And I think that relationship, once you can say, it's just doing work for me and it brought this back for me so I could get this, then somebody's going to say, well, how did you do that? And then you can start this whole conversation and increase the generational understanding of what money is and what it's for and how it works. So that's my big thing. Okay, back to your retire right.
Oh, I get
retire right. How do you retire right?
I was joking with the team I wrote the book with that I actually labeled it as kind of like a joke, like a trick question or a trick statement, right? And I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
There is no way to retire right. What I'm trying to say with the book title is that retiring right is subjective to what you want to accomplish. Period. End of story. Like there's just no, and the subtitle of the book is securing the right path to retirement. And I say that simply to say that securing your right path. And I open the
Yes.
book up with my story, my background, my why. I always ask someone, what's your why? Why do you want to be investing? Why are you here?
Yeah.
That's important, right? We all bring in our baggage. There's
Yes.
all of our stuff, and we talk about money. And so it's important to, as a good advisor to understand that person, to meet them where they are.
Mhm.
And then I go into the analogy in the book of a financial planning journey. And I relate it to, we just actually celebrated the anniversary, but Sir Edmund Hillary climbing Mount Everest and understanding that most of the deaths on a mountain climb are actually on the descend, not on the ascend. And I think it's a good imagery, if you will, of saying, hey, look, most of us talk about making money, saving money, earning money, investing money. Not a whole lot of us talk about actually coming down the mountain. Once you get to the cliff of retirement, whatever age that might be, then you're kind of like peering over and saying, hey, I can do this. Now, what does it look like descending? And that's where a plan comes in. That's where an advisor comes in. I mean, it should be on both sides, frankly, but most importantly on the descend, because that's where all the perils are.
Yeah.
I think for anyone out there when they read the book, and then I go into obviously a lot of the specifics on taxes, investing, and the more generalization stuff. And I like to, share some of my anecdotes in there. But that was the idea and the ethos behind the book, Retire Right.
I love it. I think that many people, most of us, think about saving, investing for that financial freedom day when you can go and do your thing, and don't think about, now how am I going to spend this money? How do I have to, air quotes, control my spending or spend in a way that it's going to last or continue investing in a way that's going to last? You got something there, because I don't think very many people think about that when they haven't talked to a financial planner that way.
They don't. What I share here on our show is simply from experience. I'm just showing you from working for so long in this business that everyone wants to talk about growth. I mean, it's the fun thing to talk about, right? No one wants to talk about a distribution rate, but I'll tell you what, hear me loud and clear. Like if we just saw each other at Starbucks, or if I was talking to someone listening or watching here, I would tell you as an advisor, if you want to talk about a rate of return or this stock or this investment or this thing you heard about that's great, equally as important as the rate of return is on a portfolio or any investment is what ultimately that's going to pay you. Essentially, what I mean by that is your distribution rate. Said differently, wouldn't you want to know in this imagery of a mountain where your actual cliff is, like where your peak is, right? That's defining that number. That's there's a movement right now called the FIRE number. We just call it a distribution rate, understanding we need to go to a certain amount and that amount will then pay us on a sustainable basis.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It's basically, think of it this way. I mean, when's the last time you got in a car and drove around aimlessly? Like we don't. I love to say I do. Like here on California, I want to drive PCH but I don't. I'm going somewhere,
Yeah.
I got 2 young kids, so I'm either going to a practice or I'm going somewhere. And I think anyone who's watching or listening are doing the same thing. It's amazing to me when you think about that we actually tend to do that with our money. We'll get in the car. So we might be outside the car and someone like you or us might get us in the car, and that's cool. All right. So now we're driving.
Yeah.
My focus here is like, where are you going?
Yeah.
And I think when we start realizing that we have to have a destination in mind for the money,
Mhm.
ultimately a result that gets us to that financial freedom, that retirement, if you will, that's the number of an advisor can help design for you, your specific number. Back to the book, Retiring Right, it really ends with and goes through with, if you do all the things right, the investment, the taxes, and you stay disciplined and you stay on track, you need to arrive at a destination. And that destination becomes your specific number that allows you to retire, allows you to go off into the next season of your life.
I know that a lot of what you talk about, and I don't know your whole planning situation, and obviously it's individual. So things I worry about are people who are invested solely in their 401k. So they're planning on the stock market continuing to grow, like everybody tells you it's going to. And then your year to retire comes and there's a crash. So those kinds of things worry me. And that's when I'm talking to my friends about their plan right now and being with their company, and all things are going to go just great because all things go great all the time, just like real estate back in before 2008. It always goes up, right? How do you talk? And I know this is a very specific question. Talk people out through that mitigating this possibility of a thing happening right when you're ready to. But we're going to talk about just the retirement age. You wanted to retire at 65, 67. You did that. Now I'm ready. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do this anymore. I need the money to be able to live the life I want to live. And the stock market just crashed.
Yeah. I mean, if you talk about mitigating risk, I mean, the same way, like us as a structure here at One Capital Management, we design portfolios, globally asset allocated. We're diversified managers, right? So the word diversification, I'm well aware, is sadly an overused word, but it's very important. But to what you just said, there's a statement I make a lot that it's not always what you own, but how you own it.
Okay.
And if you think about it, a lot of us in water cooler conversations or just general conversations, we'll talk about a market, a stock, an investment, whatever. A good advisor will have to sit with you and say, okay, great. How are you going to own it? Right? Are we going to own it in a 401k or a tax deferred account? Should we own it in a taxable account? Should we own it in a Roth? There's reasons for each one of those.
Okay.
So just as we would diversify our portfolio, Felicia, to your point, is we'd also want to diversify the account holdings. So having what I call bucket planning, right? So having tax deferred bucket, having an after tax bucket, having a real estate exposure. Maybe for most clients, it's a primary residence, could be a rental, but just real estate in general.
Yeah.
Maybe having an insurance wrapper that protects income or works differently or uncorrelated to other investments. So really my answer to that is really more diversify. If you're going to diversify your portfolio, you want to diversify how you own them. And so that's the notion of not always caring. So it's not always what you own, but how you own it. And I'll share this because you mentioned something, and this is a theme that's brought up constantly. And it's interesting because it's actually psychological. It's our brain saying, okay, at some point I'm going to retire, whatever age that might be. Remember, we were just talking about that. It's not a specific age. Let's say it's 40, 45, 50, earlier than 65, right? We retire. Our brain tells us if we end up making that leap into retirement, our brain tells us that, okay, whatever we had at that age is now what we have for the rest of our life. And if we do that in a stock market correction, like let's say someone did that last year during the market volatility, right?
Yeah.
They'll start thinking, oh my gosh, that's bad timing. And you've likely heard this statement before, but from a long money manager and a guy who's been doing this long enough, you have to remember, it's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market. And so when you work on that, you say, if you can train yourself, one thing I tell clients is when you retire, whatever age you choose that to be, understand this. Let's say it's 65. Let's say it's at that age. The same amount of time you had working to save to that point, God willing, you have in retirement. We treat it as a finish line, thinking whatever we have there, and if it goes down 20%, like we're screwed. You got to remember, you still have 20 or 30 years in your life. Hopefully, right? No one retires expecting to want to, God wants to call them back up the next year, but our brains think like that. And so if your specific case, which is a good one, is, hey, a 401k crashes or a company goes under at the time period you're thinking about retiring, you have to kind of get less myopic and kind of open back up and say, okay, wait a minute. Am I 90? Because if I'm 90, I understand that concern. But likely if you've worked with an advisor, you won't be as vested or overly exposed at that age. But if you're 65, 70, or any time younger, believe it or not, I think people don't realize this. They have a longer time horizon than they give themselves credit for, right? Okay. And so I think focusing on long-term investments, still saying diversified, staying the course, I call it actively waiting. I'm not saying just to die on the vine of ignorance here. I'm saying be active in what you're investing in and talk with your advisor and seek through it. But it doesn't necessarily need to be a timestamp in your world. If the market goes to hell in a handbasket, and happens to be the day you retire, it doesn't mean life's over. You still got hopefully 20, 30, 40 years left. And that's a long time period.
So what I'm hearing is that you said very interesting things there about how we think about that retirement ages. That's all the money I'm going to have. And that's all I have to live on. Mm-hmm. And if you're investing that properly, that money is still your employee. It didn't stop working for you. You stopped doing whatever that primary thing was you did to make that money. Now that money really's got to go work for you.
I'll say to that comment though, Felicia, is that's also, it's how you react. What I'm trying to say is it's how you react to it that matters. Ultimately, in our business, there's something called the Dalbar Report. It's a quantitative study on behavioral traits of investors. It comes out every year. I love it. I'm a nerd about this stuff, right? Okay. But it actually showed as of end of last year, over the past 30 years, if you just invested in the S&P 500 and just fell asleep or just lost your password, you would have earned, I'm going to quote the exact number, but just over 10% every year. The average
Okay.
investor, Felicia, over that same time period, did about 3.6%. We don't
Because
necessarily have a market problem. We have a human being problem, because in the scenario where you just put it in there and act like a robot for 30 years, you would have done pretty well. But because people are emotional, they're spinning their own biases on things, or moving out because of wrong reasons, or moving in because of wrong reasons, or vice versa, we don't do as well. And
Mm.
so the one thing about an advisor comes into play is because you're offloading, you know, that discussion to an unbiased party, as someone who can look at it, you know, completely unbiased to what you got going on. And I share this. My wife and I, our accounts are managed by my portfolio manager here at One Capital, just like my clients. My clients are kind of shocked by that sometimes. I say, well, pretty simple. I'm a human being just like you. I'm going to react.
and doctors don't operate on our families because that's emotion. There's emotions involved. There's
That's a
emotions
great analogy.
involved.
There's an emotional
Yes.
connection, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
why wouldn't we do that with our money? I mean, think about that. It's not, and we get so wrapped up in like, oh, I got to pay this person, or all the negative stuff. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. There's value to that.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. I have so many friends who don't want to pay. I was like, we're going to pay one way or another.
Yeah.
You pay them up front and know exactly what you're paying, or you can pay as they go and they are doing whatever they're doing and you have no idea. I particularly call your financial person, planner, your advisor, and have them, if you're scared, you want to be able to call somebody and talk about why you're scared, and they should be able to be able to explain to you why you should keep doing or change whatever you're doing, so that you understand.
Mhm.
And all of this is understandable. Just like medicine, we know a whole bunch in our heads about how things work, but we can explain it to somebody so they understand, who never went to medical school.
Right.
Same thing about your financial person. You're not advising you, acting like you can't. You need another person. I hard stop on that one too. There's plenty of people out here who want to help you, who really
and
want
that's
you
why
to
I think
understand.
I do a lot of shows on our channel too about asking the right questions, like how to find a financial advisor, because I do feel like there's an education that says, don't just go to anybody. Back to my specialist versus generalist analogy, right? But I think what you said, that phone call you make, that phone call has to start with trust. You have to like this person, trust this person. And that takes time. So you got to invest in this. It's an investment in the person as well. And the three things I think you always should find when an advisor is credentialed, fiduciary, and experienced. Start with those three, and then the fourth one I would add in there is simply, does that advisor have an experience, like the subcategory there, in what I need in my specific business, right? Because I might have a pension that his other clients don't have, and he's understand that. I might be a first responder with a 457B plan that acts differently than a 403B, like nonprofits and healthcare organizations. Like those specific things matter. And
I'm going to add to your list is your personalities. The personalities have to go.
Yeah.
You have to be able to
you have to
talk
like
to
the person.
person.
Yeah.
I know some people who stay with a doctor they don't like, but
Yeah.
most people don't. You want to be able to talk to them and feel like they understand you. So that's the other thing. You can get those things and then know them and like them.
And to use your vernacular, probably in your industry a lot too, is there's a bedside manner that matters, right?
Yes.
And you want to, like you said, boil it down to just simply saying you don't want to like the person. Like you don't want to feel like you're making some call to, like, I got to call Brad or something like that, like,
Yeah.
oh, my clients don't feel that way. You want to be jovial with them and talk to them and know that they know you. Like that's the big thing. Like if you feel like you're just a number, then it's like, that's a really good gut check and be like, if you feel like a number,
Wrong.
that's probably not the right route.
Wrong. Exactly. Or if you don't want to call Brad just because your name is here. And Brad makes me feel stupid when I call. Not the right person either.
Yeah. I always share people, like, if you have an advisor that's talking at you or above you, trying to act smart, two things: either A, they have no clue what they're talking about, or B, they're just mean and not for you.
Yeah.
Right. Both are not good. So you want to, like, I've always tell people when I engage with a client, like, this is a partnership. Like I'm here as a co-pilot in your car, right? This is not me leading the ship and you just do whatever I say. Because at the end of the day, it's your money. My job is to come in and help you steward it to the goals and objectives you describe to me you have. It's like having that co-pilot who's been to the destination before, back to my analogy, who knows the potholes, knows the routes, knows the detours, right? And you can choose them. I'm going to say, look, I'm going to tell you, I've been down this path before. Not great. Been over that path, has some opportunities, has some bumps, want to take it. You know what I mean? Like you want that in your life in general.
Yeah. Do you ever have a client who comes in and says, I just want you to take care of it. Don't talk to me. Just take care of it.
I don't know if I've specifically had someone who's come in and just said that, like that, but to your point, they've kind of, after our discovery meeting and our first presentation meeting, and we engage with each other, it's like, you know what, I trust you, like, I'm good. It doesn't stop me as a good advisor, though, to still communicate with them, still keep in touch with them on semi-annual basis, reaching out to them, say, hey, would you like to meet? I've definitely had those that say, I'm good, don't need to meet, but you still want the client interaction. And I would argue for anyone who does say that, deep down subconsciously, you do want someone at least touching base with you. Because if you didn't, and it went a couple of years, you're kind of like, that's weird. Even though I told them,
Yeah.
I'm good. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Kind of like someone in a relationship saying, I'm fine. Yeah, they're probably not.
I don't want anything from Earth Day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, that's probably not true. It's the same thing. I mean, this is all relationship business. It's like, okay, I hear you, but I'm still going to reach out.
Perfect. Brad, thank you so much for this. It's really good. How can people reach you?
Thank you for having me on. You can reach our YouTube channel. We come out with weekly shows at Make Your Money Matter on social media. On YouTube, you can find us. So just type in Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett. And our website at our firm is onecapital.com.
Okay, thank you. One more question, actually. How do you give back? What is your heart to make the world a better place?
If it's okay me speaking this, I'm a Christian, so I'm very involved with my church. We obviously offer our tithes, and we actually do our offerings. So my wife and I are very involved with our local community and church, and through that endeavor, I believe in what the Bible tells us is that through that, his treasures will flourish. So I focus mainly on my church. And we also have other organizations, like I work heavily in first responders. So I do a lot with police and firemen. Okay. And so we do a lot with their unions, their relief associations. We give back to them as well, because the Widows and Orphans Fund is something I really like in those communities, because actually that comes right from James 1:27, right? All religion that God cares about is, caring for widows and orphans. And so we focus a lot on those endeavors. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to ask you, you did go where I was going, is like, what's your heart to, I understand giving, I understand tithing, but sometimes we have a thing that I want this thing to be better when I leave the world.
That I would say the Relief Association, through specifically in our area, LA City Fire Department, I've seen it. My stepdad was a fire chief, so I just got involved with them really young, and I've seen what they do. I have a lot of my clients are on the Relief Association board, and just hearing what they do, and it's a beautiful thing, caring for our fallen that are helping our local communities and their families. I mean, to me, I can't think of a better, to leave better than how I found it, I guess.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for sharing that. It's part of your heart. I appreciate it. Until next time, you guys, check out Brad and check out Make Your Money Matter. I think if you don't have a good financial planner, advisor at this point, sounds like a good place to start. Just start asking questions. Thanks a lot. See you next time.
You've been listening to Money with Mission. There are projects happening right now where you can have a great financial return while positively affecting the lives of others. To learn more about our opportunities, go to moneywithmission.com.